Welcome to day 3 of Streaming Media West Connect. I am Eric Schumacher Rasmussen, the editor and VP of Streaming Media and the conference chair for Streaming Media West. And boy, I'd like to be in Huntington Beach, which is where we're supposed to be right now. Had things been back to normal, but as we all know, there ain't nothing normal anywhere right now. So we're doing what we can, and meeting virtually has the advantage of bringing people together who might not have been able to come together had we actually met in person. And we've had a great week of panels so far and presentations. We've got more coming up. We've had technical deep dives into things like CMAF and WebRTC and all sorts of geeky stuff. We've had looks at esports and sports streaming, live streaming, advertising technology coming up later today, and a number of panels looking at the state of the OTT market from various angles. I've seen a lot of the same names in various panel sessions showing up as attendees, but if anyone misses anything, all of our sessions will be available on demand on the Streaming Media YouTube channel starting next week. And you can go to streamingmedia.com to track that down. Also, next week, we will be having our Content Delivery Summit and several in-depth workshops. So there's more content to come tomorrow and next week for Streaming Media West Connect. Before we go ahead, I'd like to thank our platinum sponsor for the entire week. That's Limelight Networks, and we've got a message from our sponsor right now.
At Limelight, we're in the business of connecting people to exceptional digital experiences. Our Real-Time Edge platform has launched and grown some of the largest video properties in the world. When there's a high-traffic industry event via the internet, the chances are we're helping deliver it. The difference? Limelight's global private network puts content and applications right next to your customers at the network edge. This result is the most dynamic real-time interactions, no matter where your customers are or what their business is. Like our network, we've also optimized our software stack to be fast, reliable, and secure. And our customers have unrestricted access to live regional technical support whenever it's needed. Limelight Networks has the capacity, the global footprint, and expert service worldwide needed to meet the growing demands for online content now and in the future.
And I would also like to thank the sponsor for this panel, Teleup, and Gustavo from Teleup is part of our panel today. If you have questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A tab to submit those questions, and I will pass those along to the speakers as the event progresses. We won't be enabling audio or video for attendees, so if you raise your hand, we're going to ask you to enter your question in the Q&A tab anyway. Now, as we all know, there's no shortage of OTT platforms on the market, and even though most of the media attention goes to big names like Disney Plus and Netflix and HBO Max, there are plenty of smaller players. In fact, yesterday, Tim Natividad from Roku said that Roku has more than 14,000 channels. So how can independent channels not just survive, but thrive in this universe? And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. And we've got Jonathan Barbato from Best Ever Channels moderating the panel. And I'll pass it over to Jonathan now to introduce our all-star panelists. Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'm happy to be here and glad you had us. I think we've got a panel of some of the pioneers of this streaming media. These are the guys that are in the trenches doing the work and getting an audience, because with 14,000 channels out there, getting an audience can sometimes be a daunting task, as I'm sure they'll all attest. And then it's keeping that audience as well. So today we're going to talk about those things. We're going to talk about COVID and how it's affected all of us. But let me introduce my panel. First of all, we've got Gustavo Mier de Medeiros. Hopefully I said that right, from Teleup. Gustavo is a colleague and doing some fantastic things in the industry. I'll let him introduce himself, and then we'll move on to the rest. Gustavo? Oh, we can't hear you yet. You got your mute.
I'm mute. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan. Very happy to be here. A great supporter of Streaming Media West. Usually I participate in Streaming Media East. We are an OTT company. Traditionally, we focused on offering television to the military overseas. We have done broadcasting of military boxing matches in Stuttgart, And most recently, we're focusing on rural cable, helping rural cable operators offer an OTT package, white labeled. Our research also indicated a lot of our users are actually males that are 41 years and older, living in California in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're trying to modify our package to serve their needs, but happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gustavo. I'm going to go to you next, Eric Opeka. Eric is with Cinedigm, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure. So Cinedigm has been around for about 20 years and has been really at the forefront of the technological change in the entertainment industry. We got our start converting theaters from analog to digital, and about 6 years ago really started to get heavy into streaming. Fast forward to today, and we operate a portfolio of 20 linear and AVOD networks and 5 subscription networks. We range across a wide array of genres and content, ranging from our channel, the Dove Channel, Family Channel, ConTV, which is a fandom network, Docurama, a factual network. But we've really been expanding into global partnerships with companies like All3Media, where we're launching and have launched the So Real network. That's a joint venture of Liberty Global and Discovery. American Public Media, with quite a success, one of the most successful channels we've launched to date with their Bob Ross channel, and many more. And I think our mission really is to provide channels, content, and technology services to the broader streaming ecosystem. So we're seeing some explosive growth, as I'm sure a lot of the other panelists are here today.
Nice, thank you, Eric. Next, I'm going to go to Damien Pelliccioni, which is the pronunciation in Italian, but I don't know if that's how you say it, Damien.
Did it right. You did it right. You were perfect. Oh my God.
Pelliccioni.
Pelliccione. Sì. Parla italiano?
Sì, anche.
Anche, parla italiano. Tutte le famiglie sono italiano. Sono abruzzese. La città dell'Aquila. Anyways, we're not going to do a panel in Italian. I know.
Yeah, probably not.
Hi, everybody. I'm Damien Pelliccioni. I am one of 4 fabulous co-founders of Revry, the world's now largest LGBTQ television network. We operate 4 FAST channels, free ad-supported television channels, 3 entertainment and 1 news. We actually just launched our first LGBTQ news network, and we have 4 more coming to market, which one launched today, QueerX, our festival channel, which you can find on our owned and operated apps, watch.revry.tv, on all OTT mobile and desktop. We also operate 1 subscription product, which we call Revry Premium, which gives you access to our full library of 1,500 hours of movies, TV shows, music videos, news, podcasts, you name it. We have all things LGBTQ. We are currently live on 14 aggregators, and we have 40 more coming to market next year, or between now and the end of the year. Mostly following what Cinedigm and Jukin are doing in the same pathway. We believe that free ad-supported television, especially linear, is the future, and there's opportunity and definitely scale there. And we lead from a place of representation. We believe that representation not only saves lives, but for us, we believe in true representation and leadership. So it's myself, Aaliyah J. Daniels, our COO, LaShawn McGee, an Army veteran, our CPO, and Chris Rodriguez. We're actually 50% women of color founded, 75% people of color founded. And I don't know if this counts, but I am an immigrant from Canada, and this is my first year voting as a dual citizen.
Nice, it does count. Great, so I'm gonna move over to you, Vikrant. Vikrant is the co-founder of Future Today. Why don't you introduce yourself and the company?
Sure. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, Jonathan. I'm the co-founder of Future Today. We are the largest publisher of OTT and streaming channels on platforms like Roku, Amazon Fire, a number of smart televisions, as well as MVPDs. Started in the space actually almost about 10 years ago in 2010, 2011, as we were trying to grow our first direct-to-consumer product, which was a video platform for food and cooking enthusiasts called iFood.tv. And in the pursuit of doing that, we ran into platforms like Roku, Voxy, Yahoo had a product called Yahoo Connected Television, which was a toolbar on Samsung televisions, and the original Google TV that was announced in partnership with Sony, LG, and a bunch of others. And so we've been in the space a long, long time. And every year I feel like, or I felt like that's, that particular year is going to be the year of streaming and OTT. And I feel like, and we'll probably talk about this more, but I feel like with COVID and everything else that's been happening in our lives, it just feels like we're now at a very, very pivotal point in the streaming space. So happy to be here. We currently manage, just to maybe give you a little bit of information, we currently manage hundreds of channels, about 700 different channels on all of these different platforms, broken out into movies and television, kids and family, and lifestyle categories, and collectively manage a library of close to about 200,000 movies, TV shows, and digital video assets.
Excellent. Thank you, Vikrant. Next is Jeff Allen, the president of Shorts TV. Introduce yourself and the company.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff. Thank you, Jonathan, for doing this. And yeah, so I'm from Shorts TV. We're the first and only really 24/7 linear and OTT HD channel dedicated to the short form art form. We're pretty widely distributed. We distribute our 13,000 plus titles in US, Latin America, Europe, and in India. And we've been, for the last 15 years, we've also been hosting the Oscar-nominated short film series in the theatrical release across the United States. I've been here since May, so relatively new to this team, but I've been in the streaming industry for over a decade now, cutting my teeth as one of the initial members of a startup streaming service that was started by a Hollywood executive named Rod Freed, who wanted to disintermediate and make content and give it directly to consumers, and started a streaming service in 2007, 2008. We grew that company from the grassroots until it was acquired in 2012 by Hallmark. That service is now called Hallmark Movies now. And so I sort of grew up as the industry was growing up in that industry, wearing a lot of different hats and serving the many needs of a streaming startup. And now I'm with Shorts TV and excited to be working, doing what we're doing here to take this to the next level.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I know we worked together at Hallmark, and I've worked also with everyone here. I think all of you have done some amazing things. But last but not least, let's introduce Gene Powell. And Gene Powell is the Senior Vice President of Digital Enterprises for Shout Factory TV.
Hi, my name is Gene Powell, and I'm very happy to be here. So Shout Factory, we've been around for 17 years. We're an independent entertainment company. Our core business is we acquire and produce content and distribute across all platforms, and we market them as well. So we traditionally have been in the classic TV and film space, but over the past several years, we've expanded. So we pretty much have got our toes into every type and genre of programming. On the digital side, we do have a number of digital streaming channels. Shout Factory TV is our flagship channel, and that one is, the positioning of that is cult and classic TV and film that shape today's pop culture. So it's not just stuff that's in the background that no one has really heard of. It is things that are still relevant to today's pop culture and today's audience. We also have 4 more niche channels, starting with Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is a channel just for Mystery Science Theater fans. It contains episodes as well as some of the spin-off series from the creators of the show, like Cinematic Titanic and The Film Crew and Riff Tracks. And it also has a number of additional information, additional content like the bonus features from the DVD releases that we've done, original programs, and new programs too. Then we also have a channel called Tokushoutsu, which is a play on the word tokusatsu, the genre that describes essentially Japanese action. So for those of you not familiar with the genre, just think Power Rangers and Godzilla, and you pretty much have it all encapsulated. Then we have two other sort of show-specific channels. One is called Johnny Carson TV, which is drawn from the 5,000 plus episodes of the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. And the last one is the Carol Burnett Show, which is essentially a channel featuring her show. And over time, what we'll do is we will add related shows too, like the Tim Conway Show and the Gary Moore Show. Those are things that we have either acquired or in the process of acquiring to kind of round out that channel.
Excellent. Thank you, Gene. And I am Jonathan Barbato. I'm the moderator. I am a co-CEO of Best Ever Channels. Best Ever Channels is a newer company, only about a year old. But I have formerly run for the last 11, 12 years, Apricot Corporation, which is a digital media agency building audience on digital media, streaming media. It started with On Demand. That's how I've worked with most of these guys. And Best Ever Channels has Best Classics Ever, More You, which is a health, wealth, and wisdom channel. And we're launching a Latinx channel and a couple of other channels as fast channels coming up at the end of the year and next year. So that's my perspective on everything. And I think that's what we'll be talking about today, is a lot about fast channels and AVOD, SVOD. You know, how do you get discovered, keep an audience, stay relevant, be relevant in today's digital universe? So I'm going to start with the obvious question, which I'm going to just throw out to the panel and you know, chime in as you feel you will. COVID kind of threw us all for a loop in March. I think in some ways it's been, to this industry, a boon. In other ways, you know, it's just changed the way we do things. So I just was wondering if, from all of your perspective, not just how it's affected you and your channel, but what do you think it's done to the industry, and where do you think that's trending us forward? So for the audience who might be listening, thinking, you know, I want to get into this thing now, or I want to survive through it, you know, what would your advice be? And let's start with you, Gene, since we ended with you, and then we can just chime in as we feel.
Well, as you said, COVID has been good for this industry. I mean, it's, you know, unfortunate that there's been so many bad things that's been going on, and a lot of people have been affected in a negative way. But for our business, it has affected it in a very positive way. And I think it's just really been the catalyst for getting things going. It's given people the opportunity to try linear streaming, whereas in the past they might have had a lot of other things to do, such as working and going out and eating out, taking vacations and things like that. Now that they're at home, they can take the time. And you know, I saw a report recently from Nielsen that was saying that the 55 plus age group was actually the fastest growing demographic that's getting onto linear streaming. And so when that age group adopts something, then you pretty much see that it's gone mainstream. And I think the next 2 years, it's like no turning back. It's sort of like it's gotten that catalyst that's going to accelerate this business. And you know, I'd hate to be in the cable network industry, because that's the one that's probably, you know, it's sort of accelerating their demise.
Thank you, Gene. Does anyone else want to comment on that, or riff off of what Gene started to say?
Yeah, I'll chime in also too. I just want to throw out there, my pronouns are he, him, his, and they, them, theirs. So I completely agree with you. I look at my parents who are in their late 70s, right? And I think about how I've been trying to teach them how to use a Roku stick and Apple TV. They're the laggers, right? So yeah, you're completely right. Once that audience adopts linear, fast, OTT, any of these types of products, yeah, it is the demise of cable. Look, just for us, speaking from our own experience, our 72% of our user base is between the ages of 18 and 45. It's the Gen Z, it's the millennial LGBTQ consumer. And just when we look at the scale of the numbers and the audience, you know, for us in our community, specifically when you break down the demographic, 1 in 5 millennials identify as LGBTQ, whereas 1 in 3 Gen Z actually identify as LGBTQ. And millennials make up over 50% of global consumer purchasing power. So once they've adopted it, that's it, right? And I think it's really interesting because we are starting to, like you were saying, see those stats shift. Those baby boomers and the Gen Xers are finally catching up to us millennials, and they're really they're understanding now how to use the technology because they have all the time in the world to stay at home because they're on quarantine.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's very true.
I think I'll add real quick, you know, it is just an accelerated time. There's immense media consumption happening, right? It was trending that way anyway, and then COVID just exploded it. And because we actually have channels on linear cable also, I think I can speak from a unique perspective here, and that even our linear cable channels experienced meteoric growth in viewership due to COVID. I think people are just at home and have a lot more time to watch shows, and we're all benefiting from it.
Well, and I think that's shaping streaming media. I mean, you were talking, Gene, about how the 55 plus crowd is chiming in. Well, for those that are listening or attending this Streaming Media West that are thinking, well, maybe now's a good time to launch a streaming channel, I would say we're mid-window open, right? And closing fast. We've got, you know, Pluto being acquired 2 years ago, and Tubi being acquired last year, and Zumo in that mix. I mean, everyone's been being sort of bought up, and everyone on this panel has a foot or two in the door already. So from that perspective, how would you answer the question, not just in terms of COVID, but in terms of streaming media and this wave? You know, what is sort of the next level or the next phase of this business, and what are you doing to survive it? What would you recommend to the audience?
I'll tackle that. So, you know, we've been really, you know, I think over the last 18 months, we've been really seeing phenomenal growth out of the FAST space, the free ad supported linear. I look at this as really what's going to eat cable. You know, if you look at the number of device shipments globally, there's more than 260 million smart TVs shipped annually. You know, just even a few years ago, smart TVs were not very smart. You needed to plug a Roku in or an Apple TV, and it was underpowered, underwhelming user experience. Fast forward today, where these, you know, for, you know, $300 or $400, you can get something that is just far more powerful than even the boxes of old. You know, in that environment, this means in the US alone, there's 2.5 to 3 Comcasts worth of new devices shipped that have linear streaming baked into the firmware. And what does that mean? Well, in the past, if you were, you know, in order to get scale in the space, you needed to be able to get consumer downloads, ranking and charts, very app store driven approach. With linear, you know, by its very design, it's even though there are hundreds of channels, you know, at steady state, it's a very limited and more selective environment. And it's designed really for users who don't want to think about finding an app, downloading an app, launching an app. They just want to, you know, think about it as, you know, weeknight viewing. Thursdays, you know, 8:30, 9 p.m., you're eating a late dinner, the kids are in bed. You just want to, you know, tune out and turn your mind off and watch something and binge watch a couple episodes of, you know, UFO, Ancient Aliens or something along those lines. So that's really what fast linear is designed to do. And if you think about the $70 billion of TV ad dollars that are rapidly shifting into this environment and the rapidly emerging base, meanwhile, cable, you know, is down into the mid 80 millions of households, down from its peak just a few years ago, and is on a path to, you know, 45 to 50 million households over the next few years. This is really going to take up the slack. So, you know, we look at this as a, you know, 20 to 30 billion dollar opportunity. And the more of that dial you can control, it can be an incredibly lucrative market, not just in North America, but globally. So that's really where I think the table stakes are going to be.
Well,
Nice.
I would like to make a quick comment here. Regarding the previous statements, right? Gene was saying the demise of cable, you would not want to be cable. But what's interesting is that for the past 3 years, cable programming is like a loss leader, right? Basically, they have the cable so you keep their ISP. So I've been looking at an ISP acquisition lately, and the margins are absurd. The margins on ISP are absurd. So you definitely want to, depending on what cable company you want to be, you definitely want to be it. For example, a cable customer is worth about $2,000. If you look at the latest acquisition of Pluto, it's $28 per user, right? You have that stickiness with when you have an ISP. And 5G, everybody talks about 5G. In many areas, 5G won't work that well. So I think it depends, Gene. Yes. So when you say cable, we are free riding that pipe, right? What happens if the government starts taxing that? So I would say hold on to your cable stock, because at the end of the day, we ride on their fiber. But in terms of what Damien said, that was very interesting. He serves a very different demographic. He serves Gen X, right? And so, Damien, I assume most of your users, they use your service on a mobile phone. Is that correct?
No.
No? Okay.
No. Majority of ours are on connected TVs, and that's where we're seeing majority of our adoption. We do internationally see more mobile usage than we do on connected TV, but it's CTV, the new CTV, right? Connected TV. The biggest ones being Samsung TV Plus in this category, right? And I think everyone who has a channel on TV Plus can agree that's the behemoth in the room. I mean, we saw a demo recently from TV Plus that like smart refrigerators that have these new big, beautiful screens on them. Well, if you have favorited, Revry as one of your linear channels, you could walk by it, it wakes up, kind of like your Nest dial, and all of a sudden it'll start playing Revry because it knows already. It's all interconnected and interweaved. And I think that's where the adoption is coming. Look, Gen Z and Millennial, Gen Z, not X, the younger, the 22 and younger, they don't even know what a coax cable is. Like that's like nuts to them, right? Like their internet either comes through their phone and their screen sharing or their internet is coax, but they don't understand how, oh yeah, content used to come through that weird white giant thick cable. That's a thing of the past. I mean, look at cable cutting statistics, not just domestically, but globally, and the scale of opportunity there, kind of like what echoing Eric was saying in terms of how people are consuming that content at great scale, not just domestically, but globally.
I'd like to clarify that. I'd like to clarify that, when I refer to cable, I'm talking about the cable networks, not the cable companies.
Okay.
Cable companies are doing great. And, they're really broadband companies. I mean, they're not making money off of video.
Exactly.
And I've talked with Comcast and they say that, yeah, we lose money off of video. We love broadband. That's where we make our money. But we keep them around because they help them drive their broadband subscriptions. It's the cable networks like TNT and Discovery and ESPN, MTV. Those are the ones that should be worried and are worried, actually.
What I was
And if
gonna
I
say,
could just
John-
maybe
they're all
chime
on-
in.
They're all on Pluto TV now.
You're right.
Yeah, and you think about Pluto TV today is kind of like the cable of yesterday. I mean, they're an aggregator. They have channels. So,
Yeah.
and we want to be the channels on platforms like Pluto and Roku and Samsung, et cetera.
I was going to say the same thing. It's all that we're talking about is the evolution of television in the history of the United States. When at first, in the 30s, it started coming through the radio waves and you had your handful of channels starting to like NBC. And then we've got that cable infrastructure put in there. And then now we've got hundreds of channels and HBO launches and it's a big thing. And we go to the satellite and there's thousands of channels. We're now in the evolution of broadband TV. And yeah, the cable companies are still positioned well in the evolution of broadband TV, and companies like Pluto TV are taking that MVPD sort of stance and starting to aggregate. We saw the explosion and everything fracturing into its little component parts. And now we're seeing another consolidation with bundles coming back together.
Jonathan, just maybe going back to your original question for a second, if we work with a number of third parties, content creators, media companies, social media influencers, and help them get distribution across all of these different platforms. And I feel if you're looking into this space and you're thinking and evaluating the opportunity, the question that you have to ask is, how do I get distribution at scale, right? And not only now, how can I continue to sustain it over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Right? Because the question is right now, if you're launching an on-demand app and you're trying to build your own traffic and footprint, you have to spend money with the Rokus and the Amazons of the world. You have to build an install base, right? If your strategy is to essentially piggyback on the carriage that you're getting through the Samsung TV Pluses and the Roku channels, that's great. But the question is, how long can that strategy last, right? How long before Samsung realizes then that they can go and cut those same deals themselves and essentially push you down their channel lineup, right? Similar to perhaps, and again, I don't work with Pluto, but similar to perhaps what's happening there, where you now have a lot of Viacom channels that are basically replacing some of the other channels that they were carrying, right? So the question is, right now, if you're talking about getting carried through these third parties, the power is in their hand because they control the distribution, right? It's Samsung's user, it's not your user. Just like I'm a Comcast subscriber and I'm a Comcast user, I'm not an ABC user, right? So the question is, as you're trying to do this, what is so unique and differentiated about your content that, one, it will keep bringing the consumers back, and two, Samsung or Pluto or Roku channel or whoever it is, right, can't go directly and get that same content or similar content and replace you, right? Because eventually that's what's going to happen. I mean, we see that over and over again, where the companies that have the distribution test out different channels, see what's working, and then they go replace your channel with similar content or their own content, right? So the question is, how long can that strategy last, and is that a viable strategy in the long term?
Well,
if you don't control your own distribution?
We've seen this happen before, right? We saw it in on-demand, we saw it in cable and satellite expansion, and I think the traditional path has always been, let's race and build a brand in the meantime. But why don't, Damien, you look like you're kind of...
Eric and I were... Sorry, I'm on the edge of my seat because Eric and I were just talking about something similar recently on a phone call. Look, it's already happened. Pluto has cut out so many channels, and they're circumventing the distributors to take that content on. The difference is, how powerful is your brand and what audience does it speak to? I go back to what you'll hear me say in an investor pitch: the riches are in the niches. If you can command a niche audience, control that pipeline of content, which we do. Like at Revry, we have what we call an LGBTQ exclusivity. We have it on our content, we have it with our fast channel deals, and we have it with our technology partners. So no one can replicate our service or what we do, because we spent so much time building the television network brand that is Revry. So we're owning and commanding this funnel for this special interest. And I think the more special interest content and the more special interest channels that you can spin up, then there's another flip side to this. We bring an entirely new audience to Samsung TV Plus that was not their typical user, that they did not have data on before. So by virtue of bringing that new audience, a very affluent audience, worth $965 billion in disposable income in the US, $5 trillion globally. If you bottle the LGBTQ economy, it's the 12th largest economy in the world. I mean, it's undeniable.
I would agree with Damien there. I think I've been through multiple cycles of this kind of environment before, where there's call it vertical integration, right? Everyone just saw the Paramount consent decree has essentially been voided because vertical integration with theaters is no longer the case. But I think there's an environment now where I think we're probably facing a regulatory environment down the road where controlling both distribution and then all the content on the platform is incredibly monopolistic in practice and is likely going to hit regulatory issues down the road. It happened in broadcast television, it happened in theaters, you know, and if, you know, knock on wood, you have a Democratic Senate, Congress, and so on, I would suspect that, you know, a lot of this very deep vertical integration of content and distribution is going to be at some considerable risk because it's a serious conflict of interest, you know, and it's self-dealing, and it's not tolerated in the cable environment. It's heavily regulated. I think we'll see more regulation around that in the OTT environment. But let's put that aside for a second, because it may be unfair for a while. But as Damien said, as the big platforms look to do vertical integration, you know, take a look at Netflix. You know, is Netflix, we've seen, for example, every time they enter a niche or a vertical, scares the hell out of everyone who makes their money in that vertical. But what you end up finding out really is they cream off the top 5% of the content, the users, the big money, and they leave 95% unfilled. So, you know, that happened in the anime space. Netflix came in and carpet bombed with money and, you know, bought Yu-Gi-Oh! And other big shows. But they left huge gaps in the market that allow for a very flourishing environment for Funimation and Crunchyroll and High Dive and others to really survive. So I think, you know, and that's really, it's the, you know, I would call it the mile wide, inch deep strategy. The big guys come in, carpet bomb with, you know, $500 million and take off some of the really pristine content, but they can never super serve the niches because there's too many niches to super serve. And that's, and when we talk about a niche, you know, you think about cable and linear was really built on niches. It's evolved over time into the TNTs and TBSs and the evolution that history has made, not because, really because these are part of public companies that, you know, they have to show massive profit growth year over year over year. I think there's there's room for very robust niche, but I do agree that you can't be wholly dependent on any one platform. I think that's a recipe for really getting yourself in a jam if that platform wants to compete head on with you. It's about diversity.
So that being the case, and I think you're more or less all agreeing with each other, the question still remains, which is, okay, if Netflix took that top 5% and I'm going to go after that other 95% in any particular niche, how am I going to break through the clutter, break through the noise, you know, be one of 14,000 channels that actually gets discovered, or 100 of hundreds on Pluto, or thousands on Samsung eventually? Why don't each of you give one of your secrets? You know, how do you do customer acquisition? How do you do retention? How do you break through the clutter and stay above the noise?
I can start with that. Well, I'm very happy I got into this business early on. I would not want to get into this business now, unless I had the capability to create content, right? Content is king, everybody knows it. And that is a challenge. I've seen OTT companies start out as, you know, they had a successful company, then they would white label their technology, and, you know, just to see their major programmers circumvent them and go direct, right? And, you know, I've seen solution providers moving into the educational space, because it's very similar to the online education and OTT, just because they got crushed by the content owners. So I'm very happy I got in early and I have loyal customers. I think our secret to success is twofold. One is a really good customer service. When you call us, you got a person on the phone. You know, and then even if people go on vacation, they come back. So that relationship is very important. So that's what we do in terms of retention, just absurd customer service, you know, VIP, super patient, especially with people that are less technical. And in terms of customer acquisition, you know, we think that the freemium model works much better than advertising on Facebook or Roku or anything like that. And so most recently we started offering, best classics, for free. It's ad supported. And interesting enough, you give the customer something for free, so you get that acquisition, right? The average customer acquisition, most OTT companies, is $20. Now it's practically free. Sure, most won't convert to a paid plan, but I think offering them a taste of it for free in a very convenient way. You don't have to go back to the website. You don't have to register your credit card. That helps in bringing new people.
Yeah, no, thanks. I mean, and the Best Classics Ever's been doing the same on Amazon, just grabbing up people with and without marketing and beating some of even the newer series. So I appreciate that mention. But in terms of retention, customer service seems to be an avid category, but not necessarily a proactive one. What else are you guys doing proactively to sort of, grab up that audience and keep them?
I think today it's pretty cool and pretty interesting. We're talking about niches, and if you know your niche and you know your audience, there's definitely ways to get to them on the internet. But the internet, right, is this insatiable content craving beast that must be fed. And I think the brands that stand out today are the ones that know their audience, know their brand mission and their reason for existing, and then commit to a constant stream of brand appropriate, mission-based content just distributed out through all of the different ways of distribution. You got to be on Facebook, on Insta, on TikTok, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, with a constant stream of content that is brand appropriate, reinforces your brand message, and talks specifically to the audience that you're trying to talk to. If you commit to that and you can do it for long enough to develop, early adopters and their critical mass, you're going to find your niche. You're going to have a business. And then, of course, customer care is important. One of our little secrets is the no comment left behind rule. That is, when you place an ad through an ad platform like Facebook that gets distributed on a Facebook wall or an Instagram wall, it's an ad and a lot of people go in there and they place their ad and they just set it and they forget it and they leave it unmanned. Well, it's not just an ad, it's content that goes into a wall. People react to it, people comment on it, and it's very important for your brand to jump in there, respond to every single one, let them know that this is not an advertisement, that this is our brand telling you our brand message, and we are a part of this conversation. Even if it's just a smiley face emoji to let them know you're present, it makes a difference. No comment left behind.
Well, Jeff, you're bringing up a good point, which is that social media is an important overlay to any streaming media play. And there was a question in the question and answers around, with Gen X and Gen Y and Gen Z all becoming much more quickly the bigger audience. Is there a trend toward short form? I'm guessing your answer would be yes. We have a company for that. Please comment on that, and also everyone else. I mean, what do you think? Is content getting shorter and shorter? Is there a division, and there's definitely a long form audience and a short form audience, or different content for different reasons? I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah,
we operate over 700 channels, and I would say it depends. It depends on the form factor on which the content is being consumed and the context within which you're consuming the content. It's a different context if you're at the bus stop waiting for the bus and you want to just snack on something for 5 minutes, versus it's Saturday evening and you're really looking to entertain yourself. Also depends on the age group that you're targeting. So as an example, we have a pretty big and strong presence in the kids and family category, and what we see is that there is a certain category of content and users for which short form works really, really well for us. But then as you kind of get into the older age segment of kids, especially, they want full episode content. They don't want, a 2-minute promotional clip for, a certain show that may have been created for them, right? So I would say it depends on the context. It depends on the content. It depends on the users that you're trying to target.
Nice. Damien, you look like you have something
Yeah. I just, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm like the upper end of millennial. I just turned 39. And my husband and I were watching The Pelican Brief after, RBG died. And I hadn't watched a film from the 90s for quite some time. I just, for whatever reason, too busy. And I found ourselves getting really bored because the scenes were so long and drawn out and so dramatic. And I'm like, but I've seen this movie before. I've seen it so many times. Like, why all of a sudden can I not, like, I didn't have the attention span, or I was just drifting off to sleep, on the couch. Like, I wasn't as engaged as I used to be. And you look at the psychology of the Gen Z and millennial user, and it's shorter and shorter and shorter, right? We already psychologically are used to watching shorter form content, not necessarily like TikTok 10, 15 seconds, but web series, digital series, serialized content that is not Game of Thrones or Marvel or PVOD, right? That is a whole different world. But even when you look at the formats, there's so much action to keep you engaged, and there's not very much dialogue anymore, right? It's completely a visual medium. And so when you look at those younger audience and those demographics, you need to meet them with the format that keeps them engaged the longest.
Nice. Gene, any secrets of acquisition or retention?
Well, for our acquisition, I mean, we go after content that have existing fan bases, and we market to those fan bases. It makes it less expensive, and also because the content is recognizable, we don't have to do too much in terms of like explaining what it is. It's things that people are already familiar with.
Nice. Well, with shorter and shorter form becoming more and more popular, why do you guys think Quibi fell out? I'm gonna have my own opinions, but I'm just curious.
I don't really call it just yet. I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? I mean, they launched at a weird time, and their model was for the commuter, and people stopped commuting like right when they launched. There's all that stuff, right? There's insane competition. All these other streaming services were launching at the, in and around that time. So there's a lot to unpack. But really, content is king. People say it all the time. We said it on this call. And I think they need a hit. The way that they've done it, they're spending a lot of money on a little bit, right? And it's not really sustainable. So that content needs to find an audience. And it's a little bit weird because the way that they executed it, it's sort of the model that we're used to from old school TV. And it's, sliced and diced trying to fit into the new world. But really, it's geared at an audience that was used to that older television format, now in this like bite-sized package. And it just hasn't really hit the mark just yet. But, they did win a couple of Emmys, and they certainly raised a lot of capital and could do that again. They might have a longer runway than any of us are assuming. It'll be interesting to see which way it goes. And there's a lot of smart people there working on it. So interesting to watch the evolution. Yeah.
I think it's Hollywood's billion-dollar experiment. I read recently in Trade, like that's not my quote, that's somebody else's. But I think at the end of the day, it's not an authentic brand, right? And when you're going for that short form user, that millennial, again, not like I'm the expert on millennial or Gen Z, but I do have a lot of data on these two demos, right? They smell inauthenticity from miles away, and they'll call you out and you'll get canceled. I'm sure everyone's heard of cancel culture, right? We are very cognizant and aware. And I think a lot of it, to be completely frank, and this is our thesis, starts with leadership. Who's leading this team, and what age and what demo are they, and where do they come from, and are they actually the consumer base and part of that audience? Tom Ryan made a comment yesterday on the panel about none of these VCs wanting to invest in the early days of Pluto, and Fahad from Tubi said this too. And a lot of it was because all of these VCs were so focused on, well, they don't have very much time to watch content, so they're only watching Game of Thrones, they're only watching premium content, but they don't realize that middle America, the vast majority of Americans, will watch things for free. And they totally miss the mark on the opportunity, well before. I'm sure there's lots of VCs that are scratching their heads still. Oh shit, we should have invested in Pluto. We should have invested in Tubi. We could have been part of that 9-figure exit, right? And I think there's something to be said here because there's authenticity and leadership. And then there's also the democratization in terms of that dollar and where it's going based on classism.
Interesting.
I would agree with Jeff.
Regarding retention, acquisition, short form.
Well, I would agree with Jeff. It's really about the runway. Look, they've been successful in the positioning. You can argue it's about positioning, but it all depends how much money you can raise, how long can you hold out, and their management team, they can get it right. If you have that much money, you can hire the right people, you can pivot the company, you can do so much. Nokia started out as an agricultural company, and they became a cell phone company. So if you raise enough money, if you have the right strategic partners, you can make almost anything happen in this industry. So I wouldn't write them off as of yet.
Got it. Eric, do you want to take any of this and expand?
Sure. Well, yeah, so just in terms, look, I don't, there's been a lot of people that want to kick them, a lot of Schadenfreude around Quibi. I think, they did make a few classic startup mistakes, one being, spending billions of dollars before you have product market fit on content. I think there's, you hear around town a lot of the people that got deals wasn't necessarily because it was the best content, it's because they knew Jeffrey Katzenberg, right? It's a very old Hollywood sort of style of how the content was chosen, rather than getting data or buying data to really, or using information to try to determine what people want. So that's number one. But two, I think Quibi is a solution to a problem that no consumer has right now. Is really what they're not solving a problem for anybody. Nobody's saying, I really wish I had super premium short form content that I can get on my mobile device, because everybody has Netflix, which serves that same purpose, and other services, right? What you can sit down on your phone and watch Netflix in 7-minute chunks, and you just determine the chunks rather than someone else. So I don't know that it's really solving a problem that anybody has. And I think he had a hunch that it was a problem, and so far it hasn't been. And I would say lastly, I've watched some of the content. It's what I would characterize as mid-quality basic cable television, which is what people are running away from in droves right now, paying for. So they're smart. There's a lot of smart people over there that have a lot of experience, and maybe they can pivot and figure a way to get some relevance. But it's a really it's going to be tough with most startups try to do this without being under the big media microscope. So it's a challenge, big challenge.
All right, well, thank you all. We've got 7 minutes left, and I wanted to ask a question regarding not just the FAST channels and the evolution towards CTV and linear, reinvention of cable in the 80s and new streaming media, but we also have AVOD and SVOD, advertising supported video on demand, subscription video on demand, which for some niche channels makes sense, or at least some people think so. Let me ask you all how you're combining all of those strategies at this point. I know that a lot of you are pivoting to the FAST channels, but I also noticed, for good reason, you're not abandoning the old ones as well. How do you see these layering on each other? How do you see you reaching, if you're reaching and solving a problem for a niche viewer, whether it's Mystery Science Theater or anime or LGBT, I mean, whatever it is, how do you get to that person in multiple ways, whether it's a FAST channel? Is it a FAST channel gets them back to the AVOD channel, which leads them to, what subscription channel? I mean, what is your strategy?
Our funnel is very simple. We get them in through a freemium offering, right? That's the majority of people. Then we give them a free trial, so they're still getting it for free. Then we hit them with a subscription, which is between $6 and $39, depending on where they are. We also have service in Brazil, and then we always have the most recent Hollywood releases there, hoping that they would rent it from us. The margin is not that great, but so that is our funnel: free trial, subscription, and make sure you have the latest Hollywood movies there so that they can rent that. And so that's how we do it.
Nice. Anyone else?
We see SVOD as being complementary, SVOD and AVOD as being complementary to our FAST channel. So in a way, you could think of the FAST channel as basically a Barker channel. It gives you something to watch and promote an SVOD offering. And then, you know, our content is, I would characterize as not extremely high, you know, high value, in the sense of people are not, it's not like a new release film where people are willing to pay to watch that. You know, if there's nothing else on, people might want to watch 5 hours of Mystery Science Theater. So, but the value of the SVOD channel is being able to watch commercial free. And there's some people that value that. So I would say, you know, with SVOD, it's being able to watch commercial free, or to be able to have some additional features that you don't get on an AVOD platform. And also the ability to watch premium content that people are going to be willing to pay for. And then AVOD is, you know, it's ad supported. And then your FAST channel is basically, you get to dictate what people watch. It's not like what they get to decide, and they'll choose to watch it if they want to.
Jeff, Damien?
Yeah, I think we look at it as our product is high quality short form entertainment to provide support to the community that produces short films, right? Independent producers, students, people that have a passion for filmmaking, and that passion is so great that they can cobble together a budget and a crew and go and make a project. And sometimes they're really great, and we exist to support that whole industry in the same way that like the minor leagues of baseball supports the major leagues of baseball. You know, you got to cut your teeth somewhere, and there's a whole ecosystem around the minor leagues, and the minor leagues are awesome, and the minor leagues have diehard fans and a whole, you know, business model around the minor leagues. We're sort of looking at it like that. We have a reason for existence, and our product is the short film, the short form entertainment. So with regard to distribution and the business model to monetize it, we want to get it as widely distributed as possible. So if you give the viewer the choice, right? However they want to watch the channel, they can find it there and get it the way they want it. So it's up to us as a brand to make sure we are widely distributed across linear cable, across SVOD, AVOD, part of bigger conglomerates or MVPDs. So we're like more of a holistic approach, focusing on the reason that the brand exists, our core product, and then the people that we're serving.
Gotcha.
For us, it's a little bit different. We don't have a subscription product. We never have. You know, since the very beginning in 2010-11 when we launched, we always felt and thought that AVOD is going to be the future. And so for us, we don't have a subscription product. And also in terms of the format, we're more heavy on demand versus linear. So we have, you know, in the last few months started to launch some linear channels, but a lot of what we're doing is you know, I mean, hundreds of millions of views that we do on a monthly basis, they're all on-demand apps that we have, that we own and operate and manage. So for us, it's all about controlling the distribution. It's all about being able to really have that direct relationship with the user. And to the extent that the FAST channels can help get our brand out there and help get us more exposure from a marketing perspective, from a branding perspective, that's great. But the core focus for us is controlling the distribution and getting users to come back to our app and watch the content there.
We take a tribrid approach. We say fast, AVOD, SVOD, but SVOD's like selling this t-shirt, it's a product, right? And there's a very specific consumer that buys this t-shirt. And so we try to obviously collect as much data that the fast channels will give us. I think that is another big topic for a whole other discussion that all of us could tackle. It's the democratization, obviously, and the standardization of what data is provided to us by, you know, all of these third-party aggregators. That I do believe will have regulation hopefully coming down the funnel at some point, so we can report back not just to our rights holders, but understand those audience data points a lot better. But when you're in our direct-to-consumer, we understand and watch your audience behavior every which way. So then we know, for instance, that Vic Grant loves to watch lesbian comedies, like The Other Love Story that we have from Bangalore. It's one of his favorite things to watch. And so I'm just going to keep getting him fat on free lesbian comedies from India, and then eventually target him a promotion and get him to buy something, whether it's a subscription, a t-shirt, or something that goes along with an advertiser like Lexus or Dollar Shave Club or Gilead that we work with, right? It's becoming the marketplace and using that brand exposure to really dominate that market, that segment. And I think that for us is really the future of what we perceive, at least our lane, to look like, and the sky is the limit.
Well, thank you all. We're at the hour. I want to go on for another hour. I love this conversation, and I love how open and honest you've all been, and the insights that you all have. You're definitely in this for the long haul. So thank you all. We'll do it again sometime soon. And thank you, Eric, for giving us the platform of Streaming Media West. Most appreciated and deeply grateful to everyone.
And thank you, Jonathan, for moderating such a terrific discussion. And a final thanks to our platinum sponsor, Limelight Networks. They've been sponsoring all of Streaming Media West Connect. We're going to take a break for about an hour here and come back with a guide to how to become a remote live production ninja. So going a totally different direction for the next session in about 60 minutes. We'll see you then.
Nice.